What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Drums and Drams whiskey review. My name is Cameron, and today I'm going to be taking a look at Bardstown Bourbon Company's Discovery Series number 8. Alright, so it's worth pointing out at the beginning of this video that, for better or worse, I am a Bardstown Bourbon Company ride or die fanboy. So I became hip to all of the stuff that they were doing right around the time that Discovery 2 was released. Basically just before Discovery 3, and that's when some reviews came out of that bottle. I think the Bourbon Junkies maybe had it as their whiskey of the year, or somebody did. And after that, you could not find the Discovery Series on the shelf wherever you went. And, you know, they started to really get the hype that they deserved. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on here. The Discovery Series is a premium priced product. It's kind of the flagship line for Bardstown Bourbon Company before you get into the collaborative series, which usually involves an extra barrel finishing, process for a lot of these whiskeys. Those are pretty darn expensive. This is the Discovery Series, which again is like the top end of their core line. And then you also have the Fusion Series underneath this at about half the price. What we're dealing with here is typically some highly aged whiskeys, but it's worth pointing out that I think Bardstown Bourbon Company is feeling the same squeeze that a lot of non-distilling producers across the industry are feeling right now, which is a lack of highly aged bourbon, rye whiskey, whatever, to use in their blends. Recently, we have started to see the inclusion of highly aged Tennessee whiskey, presumably from George Dickel, which a lot of people have strong feelings about, myself included. And we've also started to see some 100% corn whiskey making its way in from Ontario. Again, people, myself included, have strong feelings about that. But it's just the reality of the current market. Bardstown Bourbon Company is trying to increase distribution, so it seems. They've recently been acquired, and of course they're trying to get their bottles into more markets. They're increasing the amount that they're producing, that they're blending, and in doing so, they have to make, I assume, tough decisions about what to include in those blends so that they have enough liquid to use. And of course, highly aged MGP is scarce. Highly aged Barton is starting to maybe become scarce, but like other distilleries as well, are not putting out or don't have the stocks to support a lot of these blending operations. So that's the long-winded way of saying it's a wild card at this point. It's a crapshoot with what we get from not only the Discovery Series, which is traditionally really good, but any kind of blended, highly aged product from any other distillery or NDP in the country. So that is kind of the setup. Let's jump into the bottle breakdown, which is going to be a little bit lengthy as well, because we also have to talk about what exactly is in the blend here. All right, so bottle breakdown on this Discovery Series number 8. First and foremost, the age of this product is between 6 to 12 years old. The proof is 114.1, which makes it 57.05% ABV. The mash bill is a blend, and the distillery is, well, it's sourced from a lot of different places. SRP on this bottle is $140, and the secondary value, while not that much more, is generally between $160 to $180. Okay, so that's the bottle breakdown, but we also need to talk more specifically about the blend, and in the case of Discovery 8, the stave finishing that they're using for this product. As many of you know, if you've ever seen one of these Discovery bottles, they are extremely transparent with what they are doing with the blending and everything else, and they put that right here on the side label. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw that up on the screen for all of you to see, and I'm gonna read this out very quickly. So the backbone of this product is a 12-year Kentucky bourbon, 78 corn, 10 rye, 12 barley. This seemingly is from Heaven Hill, although it's not, it's not exactly defined, but that's 2/3 of the blend, so that's a great backbone. Now, about 1/6 of the blend, or 17%, is an Indiana 7-year barely legal rye with 51% rye. We can assume this is coming from MGP. 11% is an Ontario 12-year corn whiskey, 100% corn, which is what I mentioned earlier in the video. And finally, it's rounded out with a very small 6% of an Indiana 6-year 95.5 rye, again, presumably from MGP. All right, so these are great components in the base blend, but as I said a little bit ago, there's some stave finishing involved here, and it's the first time that, at least I believe, that any of the Discovery bottles have involved some stave finishing component. So I'm going to throw another chart at all of you right now, and we're going to talk quickly about the stave finishing in here, which is kind of reminiscent of like a Maker's Mark Private Select bottle. Here are the proportions. You can see now 45% French oak double toast. So a lot of French oak, a lot of people are into that. 25% spice rack, who knows what that means. 20% high vanilla, have an idea of what that might taste like. 5% Rioja and 5% charred barrel. I don't really know what those things mean, but I know that there are staves involved in the finishing process. Let's see how this thing ends up on the nose. Cheers, guys. This is a woody whiskey. I'm gonna tell you that right off the bat. Tons of like dry, raw wood, but also a super dark profile. Straight away, I'll tell you that this may not sit in the realm of what I like from a whiskey. I'll kind of dig into that a little bit more as I get into this. But I think there are going to be a ton of people out there that absolutely love this. Straight away, right off the nose. Yeah, so along with kind of that raw wood quality I'm talking about, this just has that spicy pie crust note that some of the Penelope toasted barrels have. Maybe some of those Nulu toasted or double oaked, like ryes and bourbons. It's kind of like a breakfasty, pie crusty kind of thing, but with the spice cranked up to 11. Now I'm gonna say that the one note in here that I think is extremely unique to this whiskey, I have to imagine it's coming from those staves, which I think a lot of the profile, frankly, is coming from those staves. If you've ever had a coffee rubbed steak, so you're getting some of those coffee notes, but there's also kind of this savory, umami, kind of smoked meat quality to it. That is really prevalent in here for me. Like the coffee note, I think a lot of people are going to pick up on for sure, with like maybe a dark chocolate, maybe like a maple syrup note in here as well. But this kind of steak or smoked meat note, maybe even like brisket, I'm really picking up a lot of that on the nose. Not a lot of fruit in this, maybe some burnt orange that I'm picking up here. And there's also kind of a slightly rubbery note. I tend to get this on Sagamore Double Oak. I tend to get this on some Michter's Double Oaked products, especially that Double Oaked Rye. So, you know, that's kind of in the realm of where this is. It's in that Nulu, Penelope toasted, and Michter's toasted realm. Not so much in the realm of like a 1910 or a Woodford Double Oaked, which is a little bit of a sweeter Double Oaked process. All right, let's check this out on the palate. Cheers. Wow. That is one hell of a spicy whiskey. So much wood and so much spice on the palate. And truthfully, it's a fantastic drinking experience, especially for those of you who like a good Kentucky hug. Oh my God. Like I said earlier, I think even though this whiskey, I'm kind of setting it up right now, right? For the rating or whatever. Even though this whiskey is not for me, this is going to be a favorite for so many people. I truly believe that. I think it's a little bit over finished with the staves. I think there's too much wood in here. And it's drying the whiskey out just a bit. It's making it a little too woody, I guess. But so many people are into that profile, which is evidenced by the fact that all of these toasted bourbons and toasted ryes are coming to market. The Penelopes, the Nulus, I mean, every which brand has a toasted product out there right now. And a lot of them are verging, especially recently, on a little too dry, a little too woody, a little too oak spice forward. Peerless Double Oak is another one. I tend to like that sweeter Double Oak, that 1910, that Woodford quality, as opposed to some of those drier notes. But a lot of people tend towards this kind of a profile because it is more intense. It's more spicy, definitely full-bodied on the palate. And a lot of people, they just like to avoid whiskey that's too sweet. I guess at this point, I'm kind of talking about this as if it's a toasted product or a double-barreled product, and it basically is because of these staves that they've used. So from this point forward, if I do talk about it in that way, just recognize that that's why I'm doing it. So let's check this out again on the palate. Cheers. Second sip, getting into a lot more of that coffee espresso dark chocolate quality and that burnt orange that I picked up on the nose. Still not very fruity, but the oak spice kind of, it subsides just a little bit here. I'm not going to say it goes away because every sip maintains a really high level of intensity and spice on the palate. God, I'm actually kind of liking this more and more as I taste it. I'm gotta be honest, like of all of the double oaked, toasted, finished, whatever products that have come out recently, because the base bourbon that's being used in here is of such a high quality, or base blend, I should say, which is that 12-year Heaven Hill, I assume, some MGP rye, and a little bit of Ontario corn whiskey. I mean, that sounds like a nice blend. I wish I could taste it without the finishing, but even though I can't, I imagine that that's really helping the finishing process for this to maintain a solid foundational profile. Whereas some of the Penelopes, I love Penelope, by the way, they're young whiskey, so you really overdo it with the finish and you hide some of that youth. Same thing for Nulu and a lot of other companies. This is like the perfect solution to a person who might taste that Penelope and go, it's a little bit overdone, it's a little young. If you still want that spice and that intensity, you might move towards this just a bit. The finish is great, the palate's great. It could use 10% more body to balance out the spice, but that's me being picky. I'm liking it more and more. Last sip, I promise. Cheers. Yeah. Last sip. Starting to actually get a little fruitiness in there. A little bit of a strawberry, raspberry quality. One thing that I've noticed with this is if you do swirl this whiskey quite a bit and then go back to the nose, you start to get actually quite a bit of orange. I talked about burnt orange already. This becomes a little candied and sweet. So, recommendation for this, give it some time in the glass. Give the bottle some time to get some air into it. It kind of helps relax the woodiness and the oak and the spice. And then, like a cooking show, I already have back here prepared a glass where I've put several drops of water in here and let it sit for a while. And when you do that, you get a really nice, rich caramel note that starts to come out of the glass. And again, it relaxes everything. It makes it slightly less spicy. And for me, just a little bit more palatable. A lot of people, when you hear dark chocolate, espresso, maple syrup, burnt orange, spicy, when you hear those things at cask strength, transparent, you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna buy this whiskey. And I think you should. Without going into this too much more, let's go ahead and check out my final thoughts on this whiskey. Okay, final thoughts on this. Who is gonna like this? Well, I think if you dig, again, I'm gonna keep saying it, that Penelope Toasted, Nulu Toasted, Sagamore Double Oak, Michter's Toasted Rye, Michter's Toasted Bourbon, if you like any of those profiles, you're gonna love this, especially at cask strength if you want a more intense experience. Who's not gonna like this? I mean, people who are not enthralled by the double oaked movement, I'm gonna call it, which is going on right now. People like me, if you want just a great whiskey, even if it's a blend, but you don't want all of that woodiness and that oak spice, you might steer clear of this. Also, let's not forget budget on this. I mean, this is a $140 bottle before tax. When you're looking at the market and you look at like a Penelope Toasted, let's just say for $60, $80 cheaper than this bottle, and you get a comparable experience. I'm not gonna say it's the same experience, but comparable. It's kind of hard to justify this price point if you're not completely enamored with that profile. So we have to take that into consideration. In terms of value, I'm just gonna say it's an okay value. Definitely not my favorite Discovery release, as you might imagine. And at secondary, I'm not gonna pay secondary for this bottle. I don't think it's worth even a $20 to $40 upcharge. So can I recommend this whiskey? I'm gonna say yes, with some reservations. I can recommend this whiskey. And my rating on this, I'm liking it more and more. I'm gonna go 83 out of 100, which I believe is a solid B. I think 83 out of 100 is fair, taking into consideration that I'm not a big fan, but I do think there are going to be a lot of people out there that really love Discovery Series 8. That's all I've got for this video. Thank you guys so much for checking it out. Hit that like button. Consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoyed this video. If you want to help support Drums and Drams a little bit more, you can always do that over on the Patreon page. Drop me a comment below if you've tried Discovery 8. I'd love to know what you think of this bottle and what you think of the Discovery series as a whole, especially from like Discovery 5 until Discovery 8. I would love to know, your breakdowns of those different releases. But until next time, I'm gonna get out of here. Thank you so much for checking this out. Cheers, and I'll see you next time here on Drums and Drams.